My journey to learn English practice at home. Chapter 1, The First Steps. My name is Emily, and this is the story of my journey to learn English, a journey that began in the quiet corners of my room, with nothing but a notebook, a few borrowed books, and a desire to speak the language that seemed to unlock so many doors. Growing up in a small town, English was not a language we used daily. It was something I encountered only in school textbooks, spoken by teachers who themselves seemed unsure of its complexities. But I knew, deep down, that if I wanted to explore the world beyond our town, I needed to master this language. It all started when I was 12. I remember the day vividly. It was a rainy afternoon, and I was flipping through a magazine my older sister had left behind. The words on the pages felt like a puzzle, intriguing yet out of reach. I decided that day that I would learn English, no matter how hard it was or how long it took. Chapter 2. The struggles begin. The journey was anything but easy. I had no access to English classes or tutors. The internet, with its endless resources, was a luxury we couldn't afford, so I had to be creative. I started with what I had, my school textbooks. They were basic, filled with simple sentences and grammar rules, but they were my first teachers. Every evening after school, I would sit at my small wooden desk, practicing the sentences I had learned that day. This is a book. The cat is on the mat. These simple sentences were my first attempts at speaking English. But the struggles were many. My family spoke only our native language at home, and there was no one to correct my mistakes. I would often mispronounce words, confuse tenses, and struggle with sentence structure. My brothers would laugh at my awkward attempts to speak English, and I often felt discouraged. But I didn't give up. I would spend hours in front of the mirror, practicing pronunciation, trying to imitate the voices I heard on the radio or in the few English movies we could access. Chapter 3. Creating my own world. To immerse myself in English, I began to create my own world of practice. I would label objects around the house with their English names: door, window, chair, table. I made it a point to think in English, even if my sentences were broken and filled with errors. When I walked to school, I would describe everything I saw in English, even if only in my mind. The sky is blue. The children are playing. These small efforts slowly built up my confidence. My biggest breakthrough came when I found an old radio in our attic. It was a relic from the past, but it still worked. I discovered a station that played English music and news. The words were fast, and I could barely understand anything at first, but I listened every day. The melodies of the songs and the rhythm of the speech became familiar, and over time, I started picking up words and phrases. Chapter 4. The Power of Books. Books became my best friends. I would borrow English books from the school library, though they were few and often outdated. I started with children's books, which had simpler language and lots of pictures. The Little Prince was the first book I read entirely in English. It took me months to finish, and I had to look up nearly every word in a dictionary, but the sense of accomplishment I felt was immense. I then moved on to short stories and eventually novels. Reading was a challenge, but it was also an escape. Through books, I traveled to distant lands, met interesting characters, and learned about different cultures. I kept a journal where I would write down new words and their meanings. I practiced using them in sentences, even if they sounded odd at first. Chapter 5. Facing Challenges. Despite my progress, there were times when I felt like giving up. English is a complex language, and its rules often seemed arbitrary and confusing. There were days when I would spend hours on a single page, unable to make sense of the text. My pronunciation was still poor, and I was terrified of speaking English in front of others. The fear of making mistakes held me back, and I often felt isolated in my journey. But I knew I couldn't stop. I had come too far to turn back. I reminded myself of why I started: to open doors, to communicate with people from different parts of the world, and to explore opportunities beyond the boundaries of my small town. I set small goals for myself: to learn 5 new words a day, to read a chapter a week, and to speak English for at least 10 minutes a day, even if only to myself. Chapter 6: Finding My Voice. As I continued to practice, I noticed gradual improvements. My vocabulary expanded, and I became more comfortable with the language. I started writing short stories in English, which were simple at first but grew more complex over time. Writing allowed me to express myself in ways I couldn't in speech. I wrote about my dreams, my struggles, and my experiences learning English. My confidence grew, and I began participating in English activities at school. I joined the debate club, though I was often too nervous to speak. I volunteered to read in English classes, even though my voice would shake. Each small victory made me stronger. Chapter 7: A New World of Opportunities. Years passed, and my hard work began to pay off. I became one of the top students in English at my school. I won a scholarship to attend a language course in the city, where I was exposed to native speakers for the first time. The experience was eye-opening. I realized how much more I had to learn, but I also saw how far I had come. Practicing at home had laid a strong foundation for me. It had taught me discipline, perseverance, and the value of self-learning. My journey was far from over, but I was no longer the girl who struggled to form a simple sentence in English. I was now able to hold conversations, read complex texts, and even help others who were just starting their own journeys. Chapter 8: The Journey Continues. Learning English has been one of the most challenging yet rewarding experiences of my life. It has opened doors I never thought possible and allowed me to connect with people from all over the world. But more than that, it has taught me the power of determination and self-belief. Today, I continue to practice English at home. I watch English movies without subtitles, listen to podcasts, and read books. I still make mistakes, but I no longer fear them. Each mistake is a step forward, a lesson learned. My journey to learn English is ongoing. It's a journey of discovery, growth, and endless possibilities. And as I continue to practice at home, I am reminded every day that with dedication and perseverance, even the most challenging goals can be achieved. Subscribe for more videos. Your support helps me create more content. Thanks for watching.